They can't manipulate you if you don't react. Manipulation doesn't need truth. It needs reaction. Your reaction. Because the moment you react, you've already agreed to play. You've entered their frame. You've accepted their rhythm. You've started explaining yourself in a conversation you never needed to have. That's how they win. Not with facts, not with power, but with emotional bait. A sigh, a passive-aggressive comment, a sudden withdrawal, a guilt-loaded question. It's not about what they say. It's about what they're waiting for. Your reaction. And when it doesn't come, when you stay still, when you hold your silence, the structure collapses because the loop needs you to bite. That's why cold mind doesn't argue. It doesn't chase clarity. It doesn't try to fix perception. It holds. It watches. It listens without obeying. Because when you don't respond, you don't disappear. You force them to reveal themselves. The second you stop reacting, the manipulation becomes obvious and powerless. Manipulation doesn't work without your participation. Manipulation isn't magic. It's not mind reading. It's not some secret art. It's pattern recognition. They say something vague, and you rush to explain. They act cold, and you chase connection. They accuse you subtly, and you defend what you never did. Because manipulators don't need to overpower you. They just need to trigger you. To make you move first. To make you need to be seen, understood, validated. And once you react, they know exactly what works. Now they can shape the pace, shift the frame, make you question your position in a game you didn't know you were playing. But here's what cold mind sees. They don't have power. They have timing. They know when to withdraw, when to delay a response, when to phrase something just right, to press your buttons without leaving fingerprints. And most people? They fall right into it, because they confuse pressure with truth. If I feel guilty, maybe they're right. If I feel anxious, maybe I need to respond. If I feel misunderstood, maybe I should over-explain. Stop. Your emotion doesn't confirm their message. It just confirms your vulnerability. That's why silence is dangerous to them. It denies access. It denies rhythm. It denies data. Silence creates dead air, and manipulators can't breathe in it. Because without your reaction, there's no fuel, no entry point, no leverage. They're left speaking to a system that no longer mirrors their tactics. And that's not just frustrating, that's powerless. Manipulation can't survive in stillness. It needs motion. It needs you to move first. You think you're communicating. You're actually being led. You think you're clarifying. You think you're fixing a misunderstanding. You think you're being honest. But pause. Ask yourself, why are you explaining something no one actually asked? Why are you defending something that was never clearly accused? That's not communication. That's emotional bait response. They create tension. You fill it. They imply something. You correct it. They say, it's fine. You apologize again. And in every one of those moves, you think you're building trust, but you're just confirming access. Access to your mind, access to your triggers, access to your attention. Because manipulators don't control you with force. They control you with open loops. They leave gaps, and your need to close them makes you reactive. You chase reassurance. You chase clarity. You chase closure. But cold mind doesn't chase. It observes. Because here's the loop you missed. They provoke. You explain. They reposition. You defend again. They reset the frame. And suddenly, you're not leading. You're dancing, not because you're weak, but because you confused movement with progress. True communication requires equal ground, equal rhythm, mutual clarity. But manipulation only works when one person controls the tempo and the other is too uncomfortable with silence to slow it down. That's why they talk just enough to trigger you, then go quiet. Why they say, do what you want, but still expect a specific outcome. It's not confusion, it's construction. And your reaction isn't solving anything, it's sustaining everything. They don't need control, they just need your discomfort to do the work. Cold silence. 3 tactics to collapse. Manipulation without saying a word. Silence isn't avoidance, it's disruption. Cold mind doesn't go silent to escape, it goes silent to shift gravity. Here's how. 1. Don't feed the game. Every manipulative exchange has a pattern. Trigger, reaction, frame control. When you respond emotionally, you feed the loop, you validate the bait, you confirm that the pressure works. Cold silence breaks this by cutting the circuit. You pause. You don't reply. You give nothing. Not because you're confused, but because you know exactly what they're trying to pull. No argument, no defense, no follow-up, just stillness. That's when they start losing rhythm. 2nd, hold space. Break tempo. Manipulators operate on emotional tempo. They move fast, keep things vague, push urgency. Why? Because if you slow down, you'll see through it. So cold silence installs friction. You hold the space, you let the awkwardness stretch, you refuse to rush into clarity. And in that gap, they collapse into overexposure. They talk too much, reveal too much, contradict themselves, because they never planned for your stillness. They only rehearsed your reaction. 3rd, let their words undo them. You don't need to win. You don't need to catch them. You don't even need to correct them. Just let them speak. Let the silence force them to fill the air. And eventually, they do what manipulators always do. Say too much, reveal too much, contradict their original angle. Your silence becomes a mirror too sharp for them to handle. Not because you exposed them, but because they couldn't stop exposing themselves. That's the art. Cold silence doesn't confront. It lets the manipulation collapse under its own weight. You don't need to fight. You don't need to fix. You just need to be the one who holds what they can't handle. An unmoved frame. They expected a reaction. You gave them a void, and they fell into it. He didn't argue. He just let the silence do the work. It started with a guilt trap, a vague accusation, a disappointed tone, a loaded statement. I guess it just doesn't matter to you. Most people would rush to fix it, to explain, to defend, to prove they care. He didn't. He just paused, looked, and said nothing. Not passive, not angry, just still. And that silence, it ruined the script. The manipulator repeated the line, tried to stir emotion, tried to raise the stakes. Nothing. No apology. No defense. No emotional payment. Just space. And that's when it happened. They started talking more, over-explaining, contradicting, searching for traction. Because without his reaction, the bait went stale. The frame lost tension. The power flipped. What was supposed to be control turned into exposure. He didn't win by communicating better. He won by refusing to play the game. Because when you don't react, you don't give them the material they need to shape the narrative. You don't resist. You don't agree. You just remove the mirror they're trying to use against you. And suddenly, they have to face themselves, unprepared, unstable, uncontrolled. He didn't prove his point. He didn't dominate. He just let the silence burn their tactics down. You don't destroy manipulation by fighting it. You destroy it by refusing to fuel it. Final message. You don't win by talking. You win by holding frame. You don't need the last word. You don't need to prove a point. You don't need to explain your side. You just need to stop offering reactions that were never truly yours. Because the moment you react, you give shape to a frame someone else built. You confirm what they implied. You validate the tension. You hand over your emotional presence just to protect your image. That's not communication. That's entrapment. Cold mind doesn't play that game. It doesn't fight for control. It holds control by refusing to chase meaning that was designed to trap. Because most manipulation isn't loud. It's subtle. It's crafted. It's a rhythm that only works when you agree to dance. But when you pause, when you don't explain, when you sit in the silence and let it stretch, you stop the rhythm. And in that space, the tactic falls apart. You don't expose them. They expose themselves. That's cold silence. Not silence to escape, but silence to reclaim structure. Because when you stop reacting, you don't disappear. You re-enter, not as noise, but as the frame. In the next video, we'll show you how to rewire your reactions before they ruin your position. So you don't just stay silent, you stay sovereign. Subscribe. Don't defend your mind. Hold it.